Okay, out there in Marvel Land, face front, this is Stan Lee speaking. You've probably never heard a record like this before because no one would be nutty enough to make one with a bunch of offbeat artists, so anything is liable to happen.
Hey, who made you a disc jockey, Lee?
Well, Jolly Jack Kirby, say a few words to the fans, Jackson.
Okay, a few words.
Look, pal, I'll take care of the humor around here.
You've been using the same gags over and over for years.
Well, you can't accuse me of being fickle, can you? By the way, Jack, the readers have been complaining about Sue's hairdo again.
What am I supposed to do? Be a hairdresser? Next time I'll draw her bald-headed.
Boy, I'm glad we caught you when you were in a good mood.
Oh, Stan, do you have a few minutes?
For our Fabulous Gal Friday? Sure. Say hello to the fans, Flo Steinberg.
Hello, fans. It's very nice to meet you. As Marvel's corresponding secretary, I feel as though I know most of you from your letters. By the way, Saul Brodsky wants to say a few words.
Saul Brodsky? Who's he?
Stan, the fans know you have a bad memory by all the mistakes you make, but this is ridiculous. He's been your associate for years.
Really? We ought to start paying him one of these days.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that. And how come I don't get my name plastered all over the mags like you do?
Because I can't spell it, that's why.
Well, as long as you've got a good reason.
Hey, what's all that commotion out there, Saul?
Why, it's Shy Steve Ditko. He heard you're making a record and he's got mic fright. Whoops, there he goes.
Out the window again? You know, I'm beginning to think he is Spider-Man.
You mean he isn't?
Who said that?
Just that lovable old letter of me.
It's adorable Artie Simic. What brought you here?
The subway.
Oh, well, ask a bonehead question, Flo.
Stan, Sam Rosen is on the phone.
How are the letterer? My competitor?
Just for fun, Artie, you talk to him.
Hi, Sam. This is Artie. How's it going, pal?
Just great, Artie. I sure admire your lettering.
I admire yours too, Sam. I think you're tops.
Thanks. Well, nice talking to you.
The pleasure was all mine.
I never could stand that guy.
Well, that's our Artie. Just imagine what Sam is saying about him now. Well, let's see who else we can get on this record.
How about Chick Stone?
Okay. Hi, Chick. How's Tricks?
Fine, Stan. I'm reading the latest story. It's great. What a thriller.
Now, that's what we like to hear, Chick. Which one of our comics is it?
Who's reading a comic? This is a novel about James Bond. I can't wait to finish it.
Well, we're going to miss Chick around here.
Oh, look who just came in. Kid Daredevil himself, Wally Wood.
Is that a tape recorder, Flo? You know I'm afraid to talk into these machines. I can never think of anything to say. I'm not a big talker. I shut up like a clam. I get struck dumb. My mind goes blank.
Okay. Forget it. Boy, I'd hate to hear you when you feel like talking.
Stan, Dick Ears is on the phone.
Let's surprise him.
Hi, Dick. We have a recorder playing, and you're talking to millions of people right now.
You some kind of nut or something? I just want to tell you I want a raise.
Dick, don't you understand? People are listening. You're talking to the whole world.
I always knew you'd crack someday, Lee. Just my luck, it had to happen when I asked you for some more dough. Well, I'm going back to Sergeant Fury. Goodbye.
Another phone call for you, Stan.
Oh, not anymore. I'm getting an earache.
But it's Don Heck.
The idol of the Iron Man fans? The ace of the Avengers? Hi, Don. What's doing?
Stan, I was just wondering, wasn't I supposed to draw Iron Man last week?
Sure. Why do you ask?
So how come you mailed me a Patsy Walker script?
Yike! Did I do that? That's awful.
Oh, well, don't worry. I'll send it back to you.
That's not why I'm worried. I must have sent your script to Al Hartley. I can just imagine Iron Man looking like Patsy Walker this issue. Okay, talk to you later, Don.
Don't worry about it, Stan. Don't you remember that Al Hartley used to draw adventure strips? It may not be too bad.
Well, look who's here. Stan G., our demon colorer. I've been meaning to talk to you, Stan. When are you going to remember it's the Hulk who has green skin, not Captain America?
Gee whiz, the guy can't remember everything. Anyway, I had to tell you what MMMS meant last week, and you're the guy who made it up.
But when I forget something, it's different.
Yeah, it's worse.
Stan, this is the most confused record I ever heard.
Great, Sol. Just what we want. If it were anything else, it wouldn't be the Nutty Marvel bullpen.
Gosh, we don't have time for George Bell and Vince Colletter and Larry Lieber and Bob Powell and...
That's great. Now, if we ever form another club, we'll have something new to offer. Voices that haven't been heard yet.
Enough said, Sol. Now, let's all get back to work in the bullpen. And as for you, marvelous, merry marchers, welcome from all of us to all of you. If you want to know how glad we are to have you with us, just you listen. Okay, let 'em hear it, gang.
Whoa!
Face front, true believers. You're listening to the Marvel Saga, Episode 8. I'm Nicholas Prom.
And I'm Jerry McMullen. Each month we take a look at Marvel Saga, the 1985-86 anniversary special, looking at the history of the Marvel Universe told in chronological order, not necessarily publishing order, but telling one giant storyline as if it was all happening at the same time. Again, as Nicholas said, this is Episode 8. Episode 7 came out at the end of July, and we'd love to share some feedback, but we didn't get any this month.
Man, we didn't hear from like our super fan, the Irredeemable Shag, or Diabolu Frank. They've been pretty consistent with giving us feedback, but not this time. Busy month, July. I know Shag.
That's all right.
Shag just had to move, so
Yeah,
and that's stressful.
I think people are on vacations or what have you, but that's all right. We encourage feedback. We'd love to get feedback because we know, one, someone is listening, and two, it makes us do a better job. So, but looking at the calendar, we're recording this on Sunday, August 27th. We're going to put it up on Monday, August 28th, and August 28th will be the 100th anniversary of the birth of Jack Kirby.
Yeah, which is pretty momentous occasion.
Yeah, arguably one of the most important, if not the most important person in the history of Marvel Universe. So much of what we've been reading here in Marvel Saga is his work.
Yeah. I mean, I know when I get up on Monday, I'm going to try and reread the Galactus trilogy before I have to go to work.
That's great.
Yeah, because I go to work in the afternoon, so I should have time.
Well, and it is so neat to see how the comic community has embraced Jack Kirby's birthday and kind of makes it like a comic holiday.
Well, as it should be.
A lot of artists are doing the campaign Wake Up and Draw, where you're supposed to wake up and draw a character right away to start your day. Artist Phil Hester is doing his 100 Kirby's project this weekend, where he is doing 100 different illustrations of Jack Kirby characters, and it's all to benefit the Hero Initiative.
Oh, yes.
So there are just other fundraisers going on. We encourage you to read some Jack Kirby books, donate to the Hero Initiative, share comics with your friends and family, your coworkers, or whatever. I think Jack's big thing is that he just wanted people to read the books. And that's what we're encouraging everyone to do.
Yeah, I mean, I saw an interview with Jack Kirby from years ago, and he says, like, look, our job is to sell comic books. So he dreamed up all these wild ideas because, the more imagination, the more exciting, the more people want to get these books in their grubby little hands. And I think he was right on the money there. He was all about spectacle, and boy, did he deliver it. Oh, one of the, most expansive, imaginative people that I could think of. I mean, just like an endless well of ideas, Jack Kirby.
Absolutely. I've joked before on some panels that Jack Kirby was the first Marvel mutant. For as many books as he was putting out each month.
Right.
I mean, his workload from 1961 through, say, 1965, 66 was staggering.
Yeah. I mean, and he worked so fast, and it's just like he had all these ideas, just like he couldn't wait to get them out and on the page, and I love that.
Yes, and it was more than just drawing the story because, with the Marvel method, he was doing a lot of the storytelling.
Yeah.
In terms of setting up the story so that Lee would go back in and script it later. But he was also doing a lot of innovative techniques. There were a couple times, like in Fantastic Four or Thor, where he would do like mixed media page layouts.
Oh yeah, his collage stuff of like when when the FF would go to the negative zone or something. That stuff is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, Kirby had so much talent and energy. I mean, Kirby Crackle isn't just an effect on the page. It's symbolic of like just his neurons firing constantly, with this stuff.
And what's really amazing is this great his most productive years came after he had hit age 40.
Yeah.
For so many artists and creators, their greatest years are in their 20s.
Yeah.
And Kirby was getting started. He was in the World War II. I mean, his talent was there, but it was fully realized 20 years later.
Yeah. I mean, me, I love the three classic ages of comics, okay? The Golden Age, the Silver Age, and the Bronze Age. And Kirby is one of the few people who worked in all three.
Yes.
I mean, there's Joe Kubert and a few others, but and he was doing spectacular stuff for his entire career. And even I feel like I love his late period, his Bronze Age stuff, where he's doing all the writing too. Yeah. And he just gets to be, for the most part, fairly unfettered and just go. And it's some of the wildest, craziest stuff. And I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've said a couple times, Will Eisner was probably the first great artist to realize what could be done with the medium.
Yeah.
Kirby was the first great artist to elevate the medium and impact the medium, becoming so influential to so many other people. It's not to say that others weren't influential, but I think Kirby's impact carries the most weight across the succeeding generations of artists and writers.
Yeah. And to that, it's also the Eisner Centennial year.
Sure.
This spring, I was at Wizard World Comic-Con Portland, and Marv Wolfman was a guest, and he was on a panel commemorating... were you there, Jerry?
Not at Wizard World.
Okay.
Cullen was there.
Oh, okay, that's right. Sorry. But Wolfman was on this panel commemorating the Kirby and Eisner Centennial, and what he said Will was intellectual and Kirby was visceral, and I thought that was pretty apt. And I love Marv. He's fun.
Yeah.
He's one of the greats as well. And of course, when I met him, I did what I do whenever I meet a legend who I've been reading since I was a kid. I'm a blithering idiot, but he's a very, very nice man.
Yeah. I hosted a panel with him last year out at Smallville Comic-Con, and he was just a treat, and I actually caught him off guard with the question and got a really good answer out of him from it. So
nice.
All right. Well, let's talk about some Jack Kirby art. Let's talk about this issue.
Yeah, let's see. The Marvel Saga, number 8, was cover dated July of 1986, but according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, it went on sale April 8th, 1986. And of course, we have a wraparound cover, as we have this whole series. Penciled by Ron Frenz and inked by Klaus Janson and Brett Breeding.
It's a great cover.
Yeah.
It really does, capture the highlights of what we're going to see in this issue. And the only thing I would question is just the layout in terms of the X-Men being on the front portion of the cover was a very small piece in this story.
Right.
I would much rather have had the Hulk and Thane battle featured on the front cover. I know you've already got the Fantastic Four on the lower portion of this cover, but this Hulk Thane battle, I think, is one of the highlights of this issue, and to put it on the back cover kind of does it a little disservice in my mind.
Right. And I would agree with you. I would prefer that to have been front and center on the cover as well. I think it's one of the more earth-shaking events of the issue. But I understand why the X-Men are front and center. It's 1986. Sure. The X-Men are the hottest thing. They've got 3 titles, and these are Marvel's biggest sellers.
Yep. X Factor had just started up, featuring the original X-Men.
Right,
so.
and even says we even have like a banner at the top of the issue, or a tagline says "More sensational X-Men and X Factor origins." You know, they're really trying to play it up to get some more X-Men dollars on this book, and I think we'll see that. You know, throughout the series is like, oh yeah, if we can get the X-Men on the cover, you know, like please. Yeah. But yeah, it's funny. I like the back cover more, and not just the Thing and Hulk battle, but that kind of bifurcated image of Doctor Doom and Reed Richards. Mm-hmm. I love that. Love it.
Yep.
But yeah, let's get going. Book 8, Fateful Encounters. This issue was researched and compiled by Peter Sanderson. We've got a new splash panel, penciled by Ron Frenz and inked by Al Milgrom, which is cool. It's Spidey on the plane chasing down that space capsule.
Yep.
Yeah, and later in the book, there are several pages of new art, but I'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah. Well, to kick off, we're picking up where we left off last issue. Spider-Man had commandeered a plane to get him up near the orbit of the space capsule that astronaut John Jameson was in.
Yes.
That it was missing a part, that it needed a part, or else it was just going to crash into Earth. And Spider-Man gets the part, gets the plane to get up there, and amazing logistics to get the timing right. He shoots out his web line, snags it on the capsule flying overhead, pulls himself to the capsule, manages to attach this missing piece to the capsule, and the capsule it allows John Jameson to take control of the capsule again, and he pulls the ejector to let that capsule land safely to Earth.
Yeah. What I think is interesting about this, this kind of space program crisis, like we've lost control and got to get safely back to Earth. It's fairly prescient. I mean, this is like a decade before the Apollo 13 mission. Is that right?
Yes, Apollo 13 Apollo 11 was 1969.
Yeah.
Apollo 13 was 70, 71.
Yeah.
So about almost 10 years ahead of it.
Yeah.
I think there was an Apollo mission that ended with failure to launch, where it crashed or exploded there on the launch pad.
I think that was the Apollo 1.
But that was early on. I think we were still in the Mercury era at this point.
Yeah.
When the issues were published.
But this is really apt. It's really of the time because, like, it's the Cold War. We got the space race going. This is great.
Yeah, and just as a quick aside, if anyone saw the movie from earlier this year called Hidden Figures about the female scientists that helped NASA with the space program, it's an excellent film, and there's scenes where there are people just literally pulled to the side of the road watching the skies because they know that there's satellites orbiting overhead and that there's a astronaut orbiting the Earth at that point. They think that they can just look up into the skies to see it flying overhead. And
oh man,
it really captures the spirit of that age, and it's just an excellent movie. So
yeah, Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures.
I'll have to check that out. I think I might have heard something about it.
Yes,
okay.
It's definitely worth the watch. You will thank me later.
Well, okay.
All right. So Spider-Man and the capsule lands back on Earth, but Spider-Man, being the noble guy that he is, I'm going to take off. I don't need the press. No big deal. I've done my good deed for the day. He's back to Earth. I can't wait to see the Daily Beagle the next day to see what publisher J. Jonah Jameson has to say about the rescue of his son. And Peter gets the paper the next day, and the headline reads, This newspaper demands that Spider-Man be arrested and prosecuted. Editorial by J. Jonah Jameson. And this begins J. Jonah Jameson's lifelong campaign to paint Spider-Man as a public menace.
And
we'll see it later on, but part of it is that Spider-Man is a masked character, and that real heroes show their faces at all time, whether it's astronauts like his son, soldiers, or police. Those are the real heroes, not someone hiding behind a mask.
Right.
And Jameson's campaign starts to work. It starts to spin public opinion against Spider-Man. People are in the streets talking about it, what a menace Spider-Man is. Even Peter's own Aunt May is saying how dreadful that Spider-Man guy is, and she's so thankful that Peter's not Spider-Man.
Right.
He is.
Right. And Jameson carries on this long-standing tradition of yellow journalism that unfortunately still exists today. But yeah. Poor Peter and his problems.
The first of many.
Oh man. But that Parker Luck. But we cut over to the Fantastic Four, who are broke, and but luckily they got an offer to be in a movie from SM Studios, who they'd never heard of, and I hadn't either. So they go to meet the head executive of this to talk about the project, of course. And it turns out to be none other than Prince Namor the Submariner. So he says, okay, yeah. Well, look, $1 million. We'll make a movie. You'll get out of debt, and everything will be square. But really, this is a plot to destroy the Fantastic Four. He separates them all. They all have to face certain challenges. And Namor has set up these elaborate things to hopefully do them in, and then so he can run away with Sue. Reed faces off against a giant Cyclops, but bests it. Johnny fights these like it's not in the issue, but I think they've edited it out because it's kind of racist. But he fights these natives with like asbestos potion or some crap like that.
Asbestos was pretty common throughout comic books. We'll see it later on in this issue. There's a point that comes up that I made in my notes to read aloud.
Yeah, I can't remember where they've got Sue sequestered, but really the highlight of this particular story is the battle between Namor and the Thing. They fight on the beach of Hollywood. Right there in the surf, and the Thing is like, you couldn't give me a battle. What are you talking about? But then Namor's kicking the crap out of him because his feet are in the water. And it's kind of like the old myth of Antaeus. He was the strongest guy in the world as long as his feet were planted firmly on the ground. But as soon as Ben can get Namor out of the water, he's able to turn the tide. No pun intended. But unfortunately, Ben just turns back into the Ben Grimm, and Namor knocks him out cold, and then just tries to run off with Sue. But then Ben turned back into the Thing, and he and Reed and Johnny gang up on Namor. And then Sue puts herself between them. It's like, hey, you've never ganged up on anyone before. That's not right. Two things. Haven't they? And that is kind of like the constant superhero trope, or superhero teams. Like, yeah, the group of guys ganging up on this one bad guy. So I don't know if that really watches. It's like, come on, Lee, do you have like the memory of a goldfish? But anyway, she just convinces Namor to hold up his end of the deal, to stop being such a dick, and he says, okay, I'm going to hand it over to other people and they'll finish it. You'll get your money. And he just walks back into the ocean. Namor is such a strange and fascinating character. And Sue highlights it here. He says, look, he's not like us. He lives by his own code. I really like Namor as the line-wide supervillain of the early Marvel Universe. He and Doctor Doom are great with that.
Yeah.
And Magneto, too. He shows up in Thor and things.
Yes.
I like how their A-list villains could show up in anybody's book. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah. So at this point now, the story jumps over to Thor, and Thor is battling Loki. And Loki has come across critical information that's going to change the game. He has found out that Thor and Dr. Donald Blake are one and the same, that Thor changes back and forth between the two identities with the hammer, and if Thor doesn't have the hammer, he automatically becomes Dr. Blake after 1 minute. So Loki being Loki, he puts Thor in the situation where he has to choose between saving Jane Foster from a tiger or retrieving his hammer. And so, of course, Thor does the right thing in saving Jane Foster from this rogue tiger. And before he can get back to the hammer, he turns into Dr. Donald Blake. And Loki immediately puts the hammer in lockdown so Blake can't get to it. But Loki is undone by his own greed and wants and desires. Loki truly believes that he should possess the hammer and that he can hold on to it. So he frees the hammer, and as he does so, Dr. Donald Blake jumps out of hiding because he knew that Loki would come back for it. Blake grabs the hammer and becomes Thor again, and Thor takes out Loki at that point. We then take a quick look at the Hulk, who is battling Tyrannus, the long-lived monarch of an underground empire of strange beings called the Subterraneans. Tyrannus is going to appear multiple times over the years, kind of when you need one of those would-be leaders of a hidden world.
Right.
And
he is one of the most wonderful, holdovers from the Silver Age. I really enjoy Tyrannus whenever he shows up.
Yeah.
And he looks like Alexander the Great.
Yes. He looks like a Roman leader. And it's, again, going to her point about the cover earlier, I almost think this was included because Tyrannus was being featured in the Hulk annual that summer. And it becomes
that's right. Was that it wasn't the Atlantis Attacks crossover? That's a few years later.
Yeah.
I probably have that Hulk annual. Do you remember what number?
Offhand, I don't.
Okay.
I will look it up.
I can look it up too. Sorry.
Now, what's really funny, at the bottom of this page, page 11, we get the one reference to Ant-Man in this issue. It's all of 21 words.
Oh, was it? I thought there was another reference to Ant-Man. Dang it. Maybe I was wrong. But yeah, no panels for Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Well, he's in them. They're just real small.
Exactly. Well, if you look closely, you'll see him.
Oh, sure. One more thing about Tyrannus. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's neat that there's a villain who doesn't look like a stereotypically evil guy. He looks noble and regal and dashing, which is, I think, it's kind of a neat change from all the, deformed gargoyle-looking guys. He's not the mole man, he doesn't have a mustache to twirl,
All right. Now we're going to jump over to Iron Man.
Yeah.
And again, circuses are very popular, apparently, in the 1960s.
Man.
Because Iron Man has taken his date Marion to the circus. And, of course, Tony carries his briefcase with him wherever he goes because he's an important businessman.
Yeah.
And, of course, course, as happens a lot at circuses, the animals get free. People are running for the exits. Chaos ensues. Tony Stark slips away and transforms into his Iron Man suit. Now, mind you, this is still the big, bulky, gray suit that he created in Southeast Asia. Apparently, he's been carrying it around in the briefcase, so he can easily transform. He goes in and he stops the wild animals. It looks like by electrifying them. But
yeah.
He realizes that his suit is scaring people, that this gray, bulky suit is almost kind of terrifying to innocent people. And Marion makes a comment that, well, it's like he's a knight in shining armor, but the armor doesn't shine. So Tony takes it upon himself to paint the armor gold. And he initially goes with an all gold armor for a couple of issues, and then he adds red to it and becomes the red and gold armor that we commonly associate with Iron Man.
I do like that brief Golden Avenger period. I mean, the nickname stuck.
Exactly.
But I like the shine. It'd be neat to see a comic today tell a retro story of that Iron Man with the gold paint. And it'd be cool to see the paint damaged or scratched, and you see the gray underneath from a heavy battle.
Yeah,
that would look. You couldn't really do that in a Silver Age comic, but I think with today's coloring, you might be able to pull that off, and it would look neat.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the gold armor, his first mission is going up against Gargantus, and
the caveman robot.
Silver Age comics. It's a giant robot built to look like a prehistoric savage.
Now, when I've read this story, doesn't he mind control the town that he's taken over?
I believe so. It's been so long since I've read those issues.
It's okay. I'm fuzzy on it too. Maybe he didn't mind control them, but he had some hold over them, obviously.
Yeah.
And he cut off the whole town. I remember that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah.
It's so comics of the time. Again, I don't think Marvel is really looking at these as superheroes quite yet. I mean, they're still variations of the monster books.
Yeah.
Whether it's giant robots or prehistoric man, you're telling variations of the monster story here.
Yeah. Although when I look at early Iron Man covers, where he's versus Mr. Doll or facing off against Gargantus, I think this is those are such DC Comics type of ideas.
Yeah. Now, I love the top of the Nets page 14. Going back to your bit on the FF earlier.
Oh, yes.
The Fantastic Four movie has come out, and it's a huge success. It's a runaway hit, and the Fantastic Four make tons and tons of money, and they're pretty much financially set for the rest of their lives, at least until Reed Richards' patents and everything start getting up in place, and they start earning income from that. But they're financially solvent once again.
Yeah. What I think is weird about this movie thing is the idea I got is that it was plotless, it was just them showing off their powers, and I'm isn't that basically on the nightly news? People are gonna pay to go see this?
Maybe a little bit longer, and it may be in full Technicolor.
Oh yeah, that's true. This is 1962, 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, color TV isn't. Is it there yet?
Probably in limited.
Okay.
Situations, I think it was there, but I'm sure the vast majority of people still had black and white TVs.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll buy it for now.
Yeah. All right.
Back to Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Let's see. Peter Parker, worried about money, and noticing that taking notice of the FF's fame and fortune now, decides I'm gonna try to join the Fantastic Four. So I'm going to sneak into the Baxter building and show off all my powers. This is going to be great. Their alarm goes off, and, he fights the Fantastic Four, and to a standstill, but it's not like, I think they're pulling their punches because they don't want anybody to really get hurt, and they're like, what are you doing here? Like, what's the big deal? And they're mad, of course, because he just barged in on them.
Well, not just only barged in, they had an open window on the upper floors of a New York City skyscraper. Mind you, the wind alone blowing in should be pretty tremendous at that height.
Oh, yeah.
How many open windows? I mean, most windows don't open at that height because they don't want people jumping from them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, when they Reed kind of gets between Ben and Spider-Man, because the thing is ready to just clean his clock. He's pissed. And then Spidey tells him, like, look, I came to join the Fantastic Four. I figure I'm worth your top salary. And they laugh right in his face, like, look, we're a non-profit organization. We don't pay any salaries or bonuses. I love Johnny says this isn't General Motors.
This particular moment was revisited in the very first issue of What If #1.
Yeah.
In 1977, where the very first time they did that is, what if they did let him join at this point? And I think they renamed themselves the Fantastic Five, and it was kind of interesting because they ended up battling villains of both sides. They battled Spider-Man villains and FF villains, and those what ifs were always so much fun, especially when they revisited these Silver Age stories.
Yeah, I do like me some what ifs. Let me tell you, they are loads of fun. Because by the time What If was around, Marvel wasn't really doing anthology books anymore. I mean, I think by 1970 they had kind of stopped doing that. They had Marvel Spotlight and whatever, but those were trying out new things, and Marvel Premiere and whatnot. But What If was kind of like the catch-all Marvel Universe book, and it was kind of neat because you would learn about the Marvel U in a backwards kind of way.
Yeah.
This is how it didn't happen, and so you could infer as to, it happened relatively kind of like this.
And most of the times, the stories that played out, you realize that, well, it's better that the story ended the way it originally did, because most times it doesn't end with a happy ending.
A lot of those what ifs I find end up with everybody dies.
Yeah.
Despondent is like, fine, screw all you guys. I'll make you look like a bunch of pikers. Which I get the intent of that statement, but I don't know what a piker actually is. I've never known. I mean, other than someone who holds a pike, but I don't
know. I mean, I just kind of took it as a nickname, but I guess I never really thought about the origins of that.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a great copy. It sings, which is wonderful. It's a moment that stood out in my mind since I read it the first time as a kid. But not long after that, Spidey encounters the Chameleon, and he uses the Spider-Man's outlaw status to disguise himself as Spider-Man, and then commit crimes, and so Spidey will have to take the blame. But then, of course, Spidey gets wind of it and, kicks his butt. But I've always kind of enjoyed the Chameleon.
I really thought he was an underutilized villain. there was so much more you could do with a guy who can transform himself into any other person. You know, he should be able to slip into situations, do something, then just change his disguise and slip out. You know, I just not entirely the same. I just finished reading a collection of stories on the Unknown Soldier.
Oh,
he was constantly creating these different disguises to put himself into the enemy's camp, and you know, he would do his best to get as close as he could, you know, to complete his mission, but something would end up happening and his identity would be revealed and he'd have to go running away and still get the mission completed. But going back to the Chameleon, it's just one of those characters that there's a lot of potential there. I just don't think it's ever fully been realized.
yeah. I remember, I got a funny little anecdote. I remember a story, it's a Daredevil story from the 80s. I want to say it was like Denny O'Neil written or Roger McKenzie. I think Denny. And it was great. You know, the Chameleon comes up against Daredevil, and he can't fool Daredevil because he can tell the heartbeats are different. So he just kicks his ass. And I loved it. It was hilarious. And he was the new Chameleon at that point because he had the controls on his belt where he could come up with the disguise from that. At this point, he's like putting on masks and things. He's a master of disguise, which is not as cool.
Yeah. I always got Chameleon and Mysterio mixed up as a kid.
And it makes sense. And what's weird about Mysterio as a recurring villain is if you fought him, once you know what's up, once you know you're fighting Mysterio, you know everything he's doing is made up, so you can just ignore it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like this is a guy who should have to leave town and try crimes in a different city every time because, well, everybody in New York knows my deal. Let's see how it is in, you know, like, he would have been a great, like, remember how DC used the calculator and he was like that backup feature and every time he fought a different member of the Justice League or somebody? Mm-hmm. Like, Mysterio should be that villain where he turns up but he's fighting a different superhero every time because it's kind of a one-time only gag.
Kind of like Ringmaster in the Circus of Crime.
Yeah, everybody fought and kicked the crap out of them. Everybody. I want to read The Punisher versus the Circus of Crime, the last Circus of Crime story. Written by Fred Hembeck. That's what I want.
All right. Did that wrap up the Chameleon storyline?
Yeah. And so we check in real quick with the FF. Oh, sorry, this is you. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, it kind of transitions over the FF, you know, they're sorry that they couldn't bring Spider-Man in as a member, and of course, they're all kind of concerned about him in their own way, except for maybe Johnny, who knows that Spider-Man's a punk kid.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of the Fantastic Four, we check in with Dr. Doom, who last we saw was going off into deep space.
Right. Just one thing about one more thing about the FF and Spidey. Sue says, like, oh man, what if he ever turned to crime? Like, what if he turned his powers against the law? And it occurred to me, what if they had decided to kind of go the Namor route with Spidey?
Mm-hmm.
Where he says, it's me against the world, kind of guy like that.
Yeah.
That could have been a really interesting turn.
It could have been. The only thing I don't see it working is he's still a high school kid at this point.
Yeah.
And a high school kid living at home with his kindly old Aunt May.
Right.
I just think his upbringing wouldn't allow him to make that turn.
Yeah.
Now, there were probably different life events, i.e. that the Gwen Stacy, maybe that's your point to turn him.
Right. Or, if they developed it as a lab tech who was an adult who got bitten by a radioactive spider and, and he didn't have the Aunt May to go home to kind of thing. maybe they would have gone that route. But then again, that's like every Spider-Man villain.
Exactly. What you've got there is the makings of a great what if issue.
Yeah. Okay. Marvel, or if you're listening.
Yeah. So Doctor Doom is floating out in space. He's discovered by this alien race called the Ovoids.
Yeah.
And as they're taking him back to Earth, they teach him how to exchange his mind with that of another person. So, of course, Dr. Doom's first thought is, I'm going to change my mind places with Reed Richards.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have the rest of the Fantastic Four take down Dr. Doom, who has Reed Richards' mind in Dr. Doom's body. And it's just, it's one of those things that gets revisited from time to time. There's a classic storyline in John Byrne's Fantastic Four run.
Yes, during the Trial of Galactus period.
Yes, right before that, where Doctor Doom uses the mind switch abilities to save himself during a battle against Silver Surfer and...
no, it's Tyros.
Yeah.
But that was I got that trade paperback from a schoolmate of mine when I was in like junior high, and it was like I read that thing to pieces. I love that book. So I love this original story. With the mind switch, it's really great. It deserves more than a couple of panels.
Absolutely. They end up stopping Doom, but Doom once again is the culprit of his own shenanigans. He ends up getting hit by this shrinking ray. He keeps shrinking and shrinking down to the subatomic level, and he appears to disappear again, but we know we're going to see him again, probably in that subatomic universe.
Yeah, I think I'm recalling that story, and it's pretty neat.
Yeah. Now, next up is one of my favorite Fantastic Four characters.
Oh, mine too.
Known as the Impossible Man. He is a green alien who has the ability to shape change to whatever he wants. And he also has basically the mind span or attention span of a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
And he comes to Earth seeking attention, and he runs into the Fantastic Four, and they try to fight him because he's a green alien. That's what you do with aliens. And this is the scene. We see the panel where Impossible Man changes himself into an asbestos-bladed buzzsaw. He shouldn't have the ability to put asbestos on himself like that.
Right. Why is he changing properties? Shape I get, but yeah.
Yeah. But it's just it gives him an excuse for why Johnny can't stomp him.
Right.
Is that he's coated with asbestos.
But I mean, I was under the impression that the Impossible Man was invulnerable anyway.
Pretty much, yeah.
So he doesn't need asbestos to not be stopped by Johnny.
Yeah.
But
it's early on.
Yeah. And yeah, so he's a super pest and he annoys the world, basically.
And think Mr. Mxyzptlk or Batmite. I mean, this is really the first and only time that Marvel really does this imp-like character to bother one of their own.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really great that Marvel did this. DC had half a dozen imps running around, and some were, helpful and some, problematic. But, because, you got Mxyzptlk and Batmite, but there's also Zook and Quisp and, there's a couple other, I think.
Aquaman had one, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, Zook was Martian Manhunter's imp, who I think was his friend, and Quisp was Aquaman's imp, who was also friendly. And Batmite was friendly, but he caused problems anyway.
Yeah.
And Mxyzptlk was the malicious one. But I love that Marvel does an imp, and it's the greatest imp of all. And it's just a one-off. He doesn't show up again for another 10 years.
Yeah.
Or 15, I want to say.
What's interesting, the Fantastic Four figure out that the best way to defeat Impossible Man is just ignore him.
Yeah.
Walk away. He's not a threat. And Impossible Man gets upset and he leaves Earth because he's not getting the attention that he wants. And to your point, he really wasn't seen for, and not until like 75 or 76 did he come back. It was right around the time of like issue 176 of Fantastic Four, around there.
So I think like 15 years.
Yeah.
Because this is issue 13 of Fantastic Four, is it not?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
12 or 13. 12.
Okay, yeah. But it's right around there. And yeah, like super annoying, but yeah, I have a fondness for the Impossible Man that just will not die.
Yeah. And when he does reappear, he ends up crashing through the Marvel Comics offices. Goes through the
That's
bullpen.
right. I forgot about that. But he ends up like just hanging out at the Baxter Building for a while when he returns in the 70s.
About a year.
Yeah. Which is crazy to have to, and he's just hanging out watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
He's just somewhere in the background. And to me, that kind of reminds me of like many, many years later when the FF have the Future Foundation, and they've got the Dragon Man, they've got like the Power Pack Kids, they got like tons of people living in, and the extended FF family living in the Baxter Building. Or is it the Four Freedoms Plaza at that point? Didn't they go back to the Baxter Building?
It was back to the Baxter Building.
That's right. Okay.
All right. Next, we're going to check back in with Dr. Donald Blake and his nurse, Jane Foster, and they have been kidnapped by a gangster.
Yeah.
Thatcher.
Thug Thatcher.
Thatcher has been wounded, and he needs Blake to help him recover from his gunshot injuries. And, of course, like any gangster, once you're healed, the first thing you're going to do is kill off the doctor and the nurse because you're not going to need them again. And Blake makes a quick getaway to turn into Thor and stop Thatcher, but we're not quite done with that story at this point.
So we get this part with the Human Torch has a fight with Namor, and it says that they fight and it ends inconclusively. But I think that's kind of crap because, like, the Golden Age Human Torch, Jim Hammond, like, he and Namor had this huge rivalry, and they battled a bunch, and Jim Hammond's power level is so much higher than Johnny's. And Johnny's a kid. So, I mean, for Namor and Johnny to fight to a standstill, Namor's got to be kind of have an off day.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
At this time, Johnny had a feature in the Strange Tales comic.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's the John Byrne has a rule that whoever's name is on the masthead wins the competition or the battle, if Flash and Superman are racing in a Superman book, Superman wins the race. If they're racing in a Flash book, Flash wins the race. Back in the 1940s, when you had Hammond and Submariner fighting, they actually shared a book together, so that's why most of their fights ended up in a draw, that they didn't want either one to win over against the other.
Yeah.
But the Strange Tales book, where it's the Human Torch feature, he should be defeating the Submariner by the end of the story. It shouldn't end in a draw.
Yeah. Man, those Strange Tales stories are... There are a few good ones, but most of them are really bad.
Yeah. I think that was, again, and I think we might have mentioned it earlier in another episode, I think they were trying to make the Human Torch a breakout star, focus on the teenage kid, give him his own feature.
And I get that.
Yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't have been bad as just a extra page count backup feature ongoing in the regular FF book. But I don't know, like those Strange Tales Human Torch stories, like I think the Kirby drawn ones are pretty good. But once Chick Stone, I think it's Chick Stone or Dick Ayers or somebody takes over, it's just kind of like the quality goes way down, and they weren't great to begin with.
And it eventually became like a Ben and Johnny team up book.
Yeah, and I remember like basically like it would be Johnny and maybe another member of the FF, and that's just like these are just bad Fantastic Four stories. So a pox on that book. It's just like some of the lazier issues of Marvel 2-in-1 are like, Ben and one of the other members of the Fantastic Four. I'm like, really? It's just another also ran FF story, you know?
I can already read this each month in the pages of the Fantastic Four. Don't sell me the same issue a second time.
Right. But anyway, the Fantastic Four, following the Namor's fight with Johnny, the Fantastic Four are summoned to New Mexico to visit General Thunderbolt Ross. They want him to. He wants them to track down and capture the Hulk because they think he's the saboteur that's wrecking some stuff on their new test site for whatever MacGuffin. I forget. And we also see that Thunderbolt visits them at the Baxter Building, and they demonstrate the all-new Fantastic Car, the one that doesn't look like a flying bathtub. Which I like the bathtub personally. I really do. And it's really cool. It separates into 4 different sections. They all can fly. And so, anyway, they return to New Mexico with Thunderbolt Ross. And Ross introduces them to Dr. Bruce Banner and his new, never-before-seen assistant, Carl Court. Who's this guy? He's a bald geek with that kind of crown of hair. So, but yeah, they Ross wants the FF to try and capture the Hulk. But little do they know that Dr. Banner himself is the Hulk, and he goes back to his secret lab and turns into the Hulk because now he's got a machine where he can control the transformations. I don't know where Rick Jones is in this, but he shows up later. But and anyway, the Hulk goes down into these subterranean caverns where the FF are looking for him, and we have that first,
Conveniently,
right? I think it's cool that there's these caverns under New Mexico.
Yeah.
That's great. But they look great. And anyway, the Thing and the Hulk meet for the first time. By the way, I love the cover for this issue.
Yes.
With the Thing turning the bend, or just coming around the bend, and we see the Hulk's inner monologue, I'm going to smash the crap out of him. And it's awesome. So yeah, the first of many, many Thing and Hulk fights. And this is great. But the Hulk gets hit by a ray that knocks him out?
Mm-hmm.
Is the ray from...
Well, it comes from the tunnel below.
Oh, okay.
And they start investigating, and there's a giant robot down there.
Right. And so, that must be what's been wrecking the stuff at the test site, not the Hulk.
Yeah.
So the Thing smashes that and tears it up real good. And then they find Carl Court's hidden laboratory. And so he's a commie. And they capture him. Yeah, he had the ray that he used to knock out the Hulk, but Sue knocks it out of his hand because she's invisible. Yeah. And he goes to jail or whatever. And Reed and Dr. Banner have kind of this conversation where he's basically saying, I think I know you're the Hulk, but I'm not going to tell anybody. But it's their say it without speaking about it openly.
Yeah.
It's neat because then we have a little moment with Bruce and Rick Jones where they talk about, I think we'll be seeing more of that Dr. Richards, planting the seeds for let's get those guys together on something, those two big eggheads, which would be great.
Yeah. All right. Turning the page, this is page 27. We get an entirely original page of art here.
From Walt Simonson.
Who at that time was the ongoing artist, writer of Thor.
Yeah.
And basically at this point, Blake realizes that he needs to tell Jane Foster that he's Thor, because his dual identity is putting Jane in danger too many times, and he doesn't want to continually risk her without her realizing what's going on.
Yeah. Plus, he loves her, and he can say, like, when he thinks, I'm lame Don Blake, but if she knows I'm Thor, like, maybe it would be cool or whatever. So, but Odin appears in a vision and forbids him to.
Yes.
And so Don Blake, after having saying to Jane, something important I have to tell you, he kind of backpedals, like, never mind.
Yeah.
And
it's funny how Odin keeps interfering with Thor and Blake's and Foster's relationship over the years.
Zeus wouldn't give a crap. Come on, Odin, why are you so uptight?
Yeah, well, and considering that Odin is not exactly the most faithful of guys to begin with, he shouldn't really have a big deal about what his son does.
Right. I mean, Thor is not the son of Odin and Frigga. He's the son of Odin and Gaia, the Earth Mother. But I guess when you're the king of the Norse gods, you can have like that polyamorous or like something on the side, and it's cool, I guess.
Yeah. So we get Thor battling the Zartans, a shape-changing race. They're referred to as the carbon copy men.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And
something dreamed up in the last minute in the office.
Yeah. And I love this comment at the bottom. After Thor defeats them, the Zartan invasion force flees Earth, never to this day to return. So, what if they've never returned in a Marvel comic? Why give them 2 panels in Marvel Saga?
Right? Oh, I think, is it because they needed to have Thor going off into a battle following that conversation? Like, as the exit from the awkwardness with Jane?
Possibly. I don't know. It struck me as odd to, given how much material we have to cover at this time, why are you giving this third of a page to a group of race that never has returned?
Yeah, that's really strange. I mean, like, geez, the Toad Men, the Lava Men have come back, but these jokers,
yeah,
never.
Yeah.
And I'm just using a couple of other groups of losers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't the Stone Men of Saturn come back too?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You've got to be exceptionally lame not to make a reappearance. So.
Right. Or it could be like the carbon copy men could be like the Riddler. Like, oh, it's so hard to write these guys. Like, what are we gonna do? Because that's why there aren't that many Riddler stories. It's because it's hard to come up with all the stupid crap that he does.
Mm-hmm.
Even though when I get a Riddler story, at least in the old days, they're fun.
Yeah.
But
turning the page here, we get 2 more pages of the Hulk story here. He is battling the Metal Master, who basically is just throwing junk at the Hulk, attempting to stop him. He does manage to overpower the Hulk,
Yeah.
And General Ross uses that opportunity to swoop in and capture the Hulk and lock him up in their military base. But again, we're talking about the Hulk.
Yeah.
And the Hulk, once he revives, it doesn't take him long to get out of that prison or cage or whatever. I mean, he just starts pounding against the wall until he breaks a hole and gets himself free. And
now, it should note, like, okay, a couple things. That this is Ditko drawing the Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his version of the Hulk's kind of interesting. Very angry, very Frankenstein, flat top kind of character. And the Metal Master, this low rent Magneto.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't think this guy shows up again either, does he?
I don't recall him showing up, but he might be out there somewhere.
Oh, you know what I realized? If this is in chronological publishing order, this is actually before the debut of Magneto.
Correct.
Yeah, so I wonder if they said, hey, let's do that, but do it better.
Yeah.
Anyway, give him a cool costume, make him more imposing. So maybe the Metal Master is like the prototype for Magneto.
Could be.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, the Hulk. Stuff happens.
So we take a look in. General Ross is trying to console his daughter Betty because Bruce Banner hasn't been seen anywhere recently, even though he's locked up in the cell as the Hulk. Hulk does track down Metal Master and. Utilizing Banner's intelligence, tricks the alien into thinking his powers are useless against them.
Right.
Because that's what the Hulk does. And what's so funny, at the bottom of this page, we see Banner and Betty reuniting. And I'll be quite honest, when I was preparing our notes for this, realizing that this panel is Ditko art, I really thought that was Peter Parker and Betty Brant.
Oh my gosh.
And so I put down in my notes that I would cover Thor and Hulk and Spider-Man, but no, that's still part of the Hulk story there.
Right.
It is so uncanny how Bruce Banner looks like Peter Parker and Betty Ross looks like Betty Brant in that panel.
Well, at this point in his career, I think Ditko has some kind of like stock face designs. There's a lot of old men with, like white hair and bushy mustaches. There are, in a lot of his like Strange Tales era, short stories, there are old ladies that look like Aunt May.
Yeah. And his male figures, I mean, we see that pose with Peter Parker, or in this case, Bruce Banner, quite a lot. Where you kind of get a side profile of the character. You're not looking directly at the face, so it's kind of hard to tell. But it really shocked me as I was going back through it again today to realize, that's Bruce and Betty, not Peter and Betty.
That's so funny because I was looking at your outline and I was like, I don't remember Spidey coming back this late in the book. That's why. But a little inside baseball for our listeners. But
now, what's really interesting at this point is that this is the final Hulk issue. We're talking Hulk number 6 at this point.
Yeah.
And that the comic got canceled due to low sales.
Yeah. He's already kind of become the regular guest star in like, or MacGuffin in other titles. Like I meant to look it up. Do you know how long it is before the Hulk series ends and then he gets the backup feature in, I want to say, Tales to Astonish?
It's about a year or two.
Really?
Because, in that time, he makes a couple appearances in Fantastic Four, battling Bane and the team. And then he also appears in the first 2 issues of Avengers.
Right.
And those appearances justified to stand that we need to get Hulk back into a feature in a book at that point.
Right. Because as a guest star, I think the Hulk is a selling point, but Yeah, it's. I think maybe it just wasn't selling crazy because it's still pretty early on in the Marvel era, and those books we retroactively think like, oh, they were just like the revolution in comics, but it wasn't until like 1966 where Marvel overtook DC in sales.
Yeah. Well, especially during this time with Marvel could only publish 8 titles a month.
Yeah.
Their books were actually being distributed by DC.
Yep.
And so DC put the throttle on them, say, you can only put out 8 while we're putting out 20 or 30 books, you know.
Right.
And so that's why a lot of the titles were bi-monthly, so it would look like Marvel's catalog was much larger than what it was.
Right.
And it, you know, there were actually very few monthly books at that time, and the monthly books that were anthologies, there would be multiple features in those books.
Yeah.
So, just doing a quick check here on the Hulk. Hulk number 6 came out March of 1963, and then his feature started up in Tales to Astonish in October of 64.
Okay, so like a year. Yeah. And like, yeah, it's funny to think like, you know, in these early first few years, Marvel's not doing much better than like Charlton as far as sales. Like, yeah, they are a presence, but they would be like, you know, at this time, like Dell and National are the top 2, okay? Marvel would be like where Valiant are today.
Yeah.
But growing in popularity.
Very accurate. Yeah, grown in popularity, but a very limited publishing line.
Yeah.
Because Valiant themselves only puts out like 6 or 8 books a month.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very apt comparison there. Good job.
Yeah, thank you. I do what I can. But Valiant is they're really focused on let's put out the best possible books we can, and just do a handful of titles and do them really well. And I like that. And when they do a line-wide event, it's not that big a deal because like if you're reading Valiant, you're probably getting much of the line anyway. So, but anyway, back to our comic book. We check in with the X-Men, and we have 3 all new art pages by Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yes.
Which is an odd choice. I mean, I get that he was a hot artist. You know, I think he's probably doing New Mutants at this time. Was he still doing Moon Knight? Was Moon Knight going on here?
It was going on, but I don't think he was doing Moon Knight at that time. I think he was just doing the monthly New Mutants book.
Okay. And
he might have still been doing like covers for Moon Knight,
right.
But he wasn't doing the interior art.
Right. Now I'm kind of in the middle with Bill Sienkiewicz. I kind of like his earlier stuff where he's Neil Adams Jr.
Yeah.
And his later, more abstract, scratchier looking stuff is not very appealing to me. Despite I can acknowledge that like he's great, but he's not a real selling point for me with this style.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, this is pretty neat, and I think Sienkiewicz is actually kind of a good choice here, even though it's an odd one. We check in with Warren Worthington, who is gone on his own before he's met the X-Men as the Avenging Angel, and he's got a gas gun like the Sandman or the Shadow or something. But the Shadow didn't have that. But you know what I'm saying. He's like a winged pulp hero, which is cool. But is it the gas canister affects him weirdly? Like it has an adverse effect on him.
He begins imagining the scientist's gratitude and the headlines about his heroism.
Yeah. Now, at the same time...
He doesn't realize the gas has affected his mind, amplifying both his self-esteem and his aggressive instincts.
Which is important, and it's the perfect lead into a classic Marvel Comics meeting. Professor X and his 2 students he has at this time, although I thought Jean was around before Bobby or Scott. They changed that a bunch, but at any rate, Professor X has detected another mutant with Cerebro, but it gets no information, even despite the fact that he's the world's greatest telepath. But it's like, go find this guy, and hopefully we can turn him, bring him into the fold of the good, or neutralize him if he's evil or whatever. So Scott and Iceman come upon the Avenging Angel and ask him to join the X-Men, and the Angel is irrational and confrontational at this point, and they get into a classic Marvel Comics fight, and fight they do.
I'm still taken aback by the Sienkiewicz art in this particular issue. Just at least with the Simonson page, it still kind of holds some of that Silver Age look to it.
Yeah.
But the Sienkiewicz art feels very much a product of the 80s.
Yeah, and it's really jarring. And I remember, having the floppies of this and just like, whoa, what is... It just really doesn't match. Even when we get further into the issue, I think it's like number 6 into the series, and like number 16, when we see some Frank Miller Daredevil stuff, that blends in much more smoothly than this.
I'm almost wondering if there was maybe the original art wasn't available for them to reuse, and they had to create new drafts.
The impression that I got was kind of like the Avenging Angel stuff was kind of off panel. Like there wasn't really like a published X-Men story of the first meeting, and that's why that they got Sienkiewicz to do this. I don't remember. I didn't read all of them. Was it in Amazing Adventures when Angel, or Astonishing Tales, where Angel had that handful of backups that Jerry Siegel wrote?
Yeah, I believe it was Amazing Adventures.
Okay. Like Jerry Siegel wrote those, and I can't remember who the artist was, but it was, I read 1 or 2 of them. They were interesting, and they're the stories where the Worthingtons, Warren's folks get killed.
Okay.
They have a classic Marvel Comics fight, and we are left on a cliffhanger while this is going on. So, what do we have going for next month then, Jerry, for next issue?
Next month, obviously the awesome conclusion to the Angel's Origin saga, plus Spider-Man's first battle with the Vulture, which if anyone saw Spider-Man Homecoming this week, or this summer, you got to see Vulture on the big screen. We also get Peter Parker getting his first job at the Daily Bugle. We get the origin and first appearance of Dr. Octopus, the Wasp, the Watcher, and the beginnings of the story of the Kree-Skrull War.
Not to mention the FF and Submariner and Thor will also be there. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be loads of fun.
Absolutely. You know what else is going to be loads of fun?
Rose City Comic Con.
You got it. That is coming up. We're about a week and a half away from that. Wow. I will be flying out to Portland to attend and help work the Hero Initiative booth, which that is booth number 718.
Yeah.
It is right next to the Helioscope booth, where artists like Carl Kessel and Ron Randall and Steve Lieber will be.
And my friend Dan Scotty.
Dan Scotty, Paul Tobin, Colleen Coover.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great group. Definitely come by and see us at the Hero Initiative table. We are going to have artist Dave Gibbons at our table all weekend.
I'm so excited.
who did that little story called Watchmen, among others.
You know what? I'm getting signed by him. First of all, I'm so glad you're right next to the helioscope because I'm like, this is going to be my base of operations for the con. Because like my buddy Dan is there. Our friends Darren and Ruth Sutherland are going to be there. And of course, they're always hanging around Ron Randall with good reason. He's a great guy. And have you guys from the Worst Comic Podcast ever around, and the legend Dave Gibbons, 2000 AD, Green Lantern, Watchmen, and a little Superman story called For the Man Who Has Everything.
Yes.
Which that's what I'm getting signed.
Nice. I've got that in reprint. I don't actually own that particular issue.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to decide if I bring my Superman reprint book along or if I get my Watchmen collection signed. So
yeah. So what I see, this is part of my evil plan to rule the world. Not really. I've talked about I'm collecting all of the Superman like anniversary issues, specials, and annuals of the 80s pre-crisis, and I'm gonna get them bound by our friends from Omaha Bound at some point.
Yes. Tim Benson, who will be at Rose City Comic Con.
And I can talk to him about that. I have a few more books that I need before I can get that book made, but I also have the Superman special where he fights Amazo. Do you remember that one from the early 80s? Well, mine I picked up at a swap meet. Not only is it a Canadian price variant, which you never see in the wild. You don't see those because the print runs are smaller, I think. Or just whatever. You just don't see them here.
Yeah.
But mine's signed by Irv Novick and Julia Schwartz.
Wow.
Yeah. And I picked this up for a few dollars at a swap meet. I'm like, oh. So that's going to be really great in a bound volume. And it'll be really nice to have that with the Gibbons signed book as well.
Absolutely.
So that's just something I'm jazzed about.
Yeah. Well, definitely look us up at Rose City Comic Con if you're attending. Again, you can start by finding the Hero Initiative booth at 718 and track us down. Let us know if you're listening to the show. Give us your thoughts, inputs. Cash, we'll take money.
And we'll give it to the Hero Initiative.
Yeah, we will. But the main thing is just to come out and have fun and hang out with our friends. And that's the comic conventions. It's really our tribe getting together to hang out with each other. And so looking forward to spending time face-to-face with Nicholas again and seeing our other Oregon friends out there. And it's such a great lineup. There is so much comic talent out there at that show. It's insane.
Yeah, no, it's really going to be great. Neil Adams is going to be there. And I love Neil. He's a nut, but he's a great guy. And he's just always enjoyable to stop and say hello to.
I've seen him enough. He recognizes my face.
That's good.
It'll be interesting because he's appeared quite often at Kansas City shows. So it'll be interesting to see if he recognizes my face outside that location. Right.
But yeah, Neil and there are many other people. I'm just blanking right now. It's going to be a great show and a great time. We should probably wrap this up though.
Yeah. We need to. At least I need to start packing here sooner or later. But it's all right. Anyway, if you're looking for either of us, I'm with the Worst Comic Podcast Ever. You can find our show on iTunes, Libsyn, Google Play, any of those sources. Find us on Facebook or Twitter. We'd love to have you give our show a listen, as well as would love to have you listen to Comic Reflections.
That's right, which you can also find on iTunes, Stitcher, and I think Google Play as well. And I think this is great. This episode should be dropping on Kirby's 100th birthday, and I think that's terrific.
Very appropriate. Happy birthday, Jack.
Yeah.
All right, Excelsior.
Yes.
Okay, out there in Marveland, face front, this is Stan Lee speaking. You've probably never heard a record like this before because no one would be nutty enough to make one with a bunch of offbeat artists, so anything is liable to happen.
Hey, who made you a disc jockey, Lee?
Well, Jolly Jack Kirby, say a few words to the fans, Jackson.
Okay, a few words.
Look, pal, I'll take care of the humor around here.
You've been using the same gags over and over for years.
Well, you can't accuse me of being fickle, can you? By the way, Jack, the readers have been complaining about Sue's hairdo again.
What am I supposed to do? Be a hairdresser? Next time I'll draw her bald-headed.
Boy, I'm glad we caught you when you were in a good mood.
Oh, Stan, do you have a few minutes?
For our fabulous Gal Friday? Sure. Say hello to the fans, Flo Steinberg.
Hello, fans. It's very nice to meet you. As Marvel's corresponding secretary, I feel as though I know most of you from your letters. By the way, Saul Brodsky wants to say a few words.
Saul Brodsky? Who's he?
Stan, the fans know you have a bad memory by all the mistakes you make, but this is ridiculous. He's been your associate for years.
Really? We ought to start paying him one of these days.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that. And how come I don't get my name plastered all over the mags like you do?
Because I can't spell it, that's why.
Well, as long as you've got a good reason.
Hey, what's all that commotion out there, Saul?
Why, it's Shy Steve Ditko. He heard you're making a record and he's got mic fright. Whoops, there he goes.
Out the window again? You know, I'm beginning to think he is Spider-Man.
You mean he isn't?
Who said that?
Just that lovable old letter of me.
It's adorable Artie Simic. What brought you here?
The subway.
Oh, well, ask a bonehead question, Flo.
Stan, Sam Rosen is on the phone.
How are the letterer? My competitor?
Just for fun, Artie, you talk to him.
Hi, Sam. This is Artie. How's it going, pal?
Just great, Artie. I sure admire your lettering.
I admire yours too, Sam. I think you're tops.
Thanks. Well, nice talking to you.
The pleasure was all mine.
I never could stand that guy.
Well, that's our Artie. Just imagine what Sam is saying about him now. Well, let's see who else we can get on this record.
How about Chick Stone?
Okay. Hi, Chick. How's Tricks?
Fine, Stan. I'm reading the latest story. It's great. What a thriller.
Now, that's what we like to hear, Chick. Which one of our comics is it?
Who's reading a comic? This is a novel about James Bond. I can't wait to finish it.
Well, we're going to miss Chick around here.
Oh, look who just came in. Kid Daredevil himself, Wally Wood.
Is that a tape recorder, Flo? You know I'm afraid to talk into these machines. I can never think of anything to say. I'm not a big talker. I shut up like a clam. I get struck dumb. My mind goes blank.
Okay. Forget it. Boy, I'd hate to hear you when you feel like talking.
Stan, Dick Ears is on the phone.
Let's surprise him.
Hi, Dick. We have a recorder playing, and you're talking to millions of people right now.
You some kind of nut or something? I just want to tell you I want a raise.
Dick, don't you understand? People are listening. You're talking to the whole world.
I always knew you'd crack someday, Lee. Just my luck, it had to happen when I asked you for some more dough. Well, I'm going back to Sergeant Fury. Goodbye.
Another phone call for you, Stan.
Oh, not anymore. I'm getting an earache.
But it's Don Heck.
The idol of the Iron Man fans? The ace of the Avengers? Hi, Don. What's doing?
Stan, I was just wondering, wasn't I supposed to draw Iron Man last week?
Sure. Why do you ask?
So how come you mailed me a Patsy Walker script?
Yipe! Did I do that? That's awful.
Oh, well, don't worry. I'll send it back to you.
That's not why I'm worried. I must have sent your script to Al Hartley. I can just imagine Iron Man looking like Patsy Walker this issue. Okay, talk to you later, Don.
Don't worry about it, Stan. Don't you remember that Al Hartley used to draw adventure strips? It may not be too bad.
Well, look who's here. Stan G., our demon colorer. I've been meaning to talk to you, Stan. When are you going to remember it's the Hulk who has green skin, not Captain America?
Gee whiz, the guy can't remember everything. Anyway, I had to tell you what MMMS meant last week, and you're the guy who made it up.
But when I forget something, it's different.
Yeah, it's worse.
Stan, this is the most confused record I ever heard.
Great, Sol. Just what we want. If it were anything else, it wouldn't be the nutty Marvel bullpen.
Gosh, we don't have time for George Bell and Vince Colletter and Larry Lieber and Bob Powell and...
That's great. Now, if we ever form another club, we'll have something new to offer. Voices that haven't been heard yet.
Enough said, Sol. Now, let's all get back to work in the bullpen, and as for you, marvelous, merry marchers, welcome from all of us to all of you. If you want to know how glad we are to have you with us, just you listen. Okay, let 'em hear it, gang. Whoa!